Tonight's Rings of Power does not disappoint. Each week I'm going into this now thinking, what if the show is actually good this week? Actually, that'd be great. But what if it's just not that bad? What if it's okay? Um, and this episode put that to bed in about 10 seconds flat. I'm Ben DeBono, sci-fi Christian here. There's so much to talk about tonight. Oh man, I'm up way too late, so watch this episode right at the premiere, post 11 p.m. Central Time. Thankfully, I don't have work tomorrow. I have the day off, so I'm recording this for you now, so we can get it up. Man, let's just start um, right at the beginning. I'm gonna get to, thankfully, if you see the little icon on here, they jobs for all you South Park fans out there. Uh, it's just this show unironically recreates that great South Park meme. All right, so we start off here tonight um, in not Minas Tirith, by which I mean Numenor. I call it not Minas Tirith because they totally recreated the whole, landing strip for Minas Tirith with the white tree and everything, right out kind of where Denethor does his plunge off of the tower in Return of the King. Um, I don't know why the show is so hell bent on echoing the visual style of Peter Jackson's trilogy. Like, why? Why invent? Why invite a comparison that you're gonna wind up on the wrong side of? Now, I get some of the descriptions. A lot of the descriptions in Peter Jackson's stuff, especially from Minas Tirith, are based on Tolkien's own writing and his illustrations. I also get that they have John Howe working on this show, and he worked on, of course, Lord of the Rings with great Tolkien illustrators. But man, it's like they're just hell bent on making you think of something better. Like, why? Why? I don't get it. I don't get it. But then, that critique is quickly forgotten as we get to the blessing of the children. Now, this is a dream sequence, a vision sequence for, what's her name? The regent of Minas Tirith, of Numenor, uh, who's just a delightful character. I think we'll be seeing a lot more of her. But the blessing of the children, what the hell is that? like, there's like three kids there. And do they do this for everybody? This is just part of Numenor society. You get to go to the throne room and have your children get blessed. And then, I'm not interested in ragging on the show for diversity because, whatever, it's fine. Like, I'm not going to get hung up about that. Other people can. I don't care. If the show wants to have a diverse cast, that's fine. But this scene, it was like a stock photo, like an office stock photo, because they had every race perfectly represented in the blessing of the children. And then then it starts to, we get the earthquake that's going to come to the tidal wave, and which is it's good. Like, it's actually, it should be a good scene because if you know your Tolkien lore, not that this show does, but Numenor is, kind of Tolkien's Atlantis, and so that's its inevitable fate. Uh, and but then she says sometimes our island needs a stretch. So super dumb scene. And I'm just like, okay, any concerns I had this show wasn't going to be funny this week, totally put to bed. But then it gets even better because then we go to Numenor where there's a crowd getting stirred up, and the guy's sitting there stirring up the crowd, the rabble rouser, and he's ranting about the elves are going to take their jobs. Okay, so if you don't watch South Park, just pause this, go search on YouTube for South Park. They took our jobs. Um, it's one of the funniest scenes they've done, and they've brought it up a number of times. It's kind of the South Park rednecks ranting about they're not Mexicans in the show, but it's a parallel for immigration in South Park, and they just get there. The joke in the South Park episode is that the rednecks just keep this constant refrain of "they took our jobs," and it's like this guy's doing the same rant, but they have no sense of irony about it. And then Beard Guy, I don't understand who Beard Guy is or what his purpose is, but I guess he's a Numenorian politician. He intervenes and then he like drinks all around. And then you got the spoofing crowd out there. Oh my gosh, they do their own thing, and then this scene goes on, and we get Isildur's sister flirting with this guy, and it's just like this is all the first 5 minutes of the episode, and I'm just like, what the hell is happening? What what is going on in this show? It's insane. It's absolutely bonkers what's happening in this show. They they, they don't know what they're doing. They, they're just like putting scenes out there. You couldn't make this less Tolkien-esque. Like this is what Numenor is. They're worried about the elves taking their jobs because one elf showed up in Numenor. What is happening? As though the elves are gonna invade Numenor because and just start taking over the jobs the Numenorians don't want to do. Because again, go back to South Park, it's a parallel for immigration, right? Like, the whole thing with immigration is people who are, less well off in their country coming here and disrupting things economically. So they're not referencing South Park intentionally, but they're clearly trying to evoke the same anti-immigrant sentiment, but it doesn't work. Like the parallel doesn't work at all. Why would the elves want to come to Numenor? There are not enough elf jobs in Middle Earth. Oh, it's just delightful. Oh, but it gets even better because then we get Galadriel. Okay, so let's talk about Galadriel for a second. Uh, Galadriel clearly has mental issues. I'm sorry, but she's legit insane. Like if you met Galadriel in real life, she's one of these people who, you listen to her for 30 seconds, you're like, okay, there's some passion there or whatever. You listen to her for 30 minutes, you're like, where's the padded cell? Because she needs to be in it. Because this is somebody who is not well. This is so she's fighting with the regent, and she gets her audience with the regent, and it doesn't go well because she's ranting about how just give me an army, we can fight together. Okay, pause. Whom is Galadriel going to fight? Like she wants an army. She's pitching to Numenor an alliance, which spoilers is going to be the last alliance of men and elves, and what we see when Sauron's has the ring cut from his hand. So okay, we know from the story that there's going to be an alliance between men and elves, but at this point, Sauron's not there, and even for Galadriel, she's trying to hunt him down. But there, as far as she knows, she doesn't know what's going on in the Southlands where the orcs are there. But there's no army to fight. So what exactly is she trying to sell? Like, isn't her whole strategy at this point to find Sauron and get rid of him before there's a need for a giant army to go fight him? So who is she trying to sell on this? What is her deal? Who does she want to fight with this big alliance that she's proposing? It makes no sense. And then we get this scene with her because the regent's like, yeah, whatever, you're gone. This isn't gonna happen. And you remember the moment in Lord of the Rings where Denethor and Gandalf are kind of having their little tense standoff, and Gandalf has this moment where he says, "Authority is not given to you to deny the return of the king, Stuart." And it's a great moment of like, tense politics here in Middle Earth. Well, the world is going to hell around them, and Gandalf's trying to rouse Denethor to fight, and it's like there's so much happening in this scene. It's just a great moment. Well, we try and recreate the same thing here, which again goes back to the same thing I was saying earlier about the visual style. What are we trying to accomplish in this show by continually referencing the Peter Jackson thing? Because Galadriel gives the same speech, and she says, "There is a tempest in me, and if you don't listen to me, I'll demand an audience with the true King Regent." It's like she completely echoes the Gandalf speech, and then, unlike the Gandalf thing where it's like he storms out and there's this tense standoff between him and Denethor, and then it's like the scene's over, but it's what's going to happen next. Well, we do a hard cut to Galadriel in jail, and I laughed out loud. It's so funny because it's just flat on her face. It's like where Gandalf has all this power and all this gravitas that he's bringing to that moment, Galadriel just shits the bed. Oh, then she's in jail with what's his name, um, Hal Brand, Haldor, whatever the guy's name is great. But we're not done on Numenor yet, because just when you think there isn't enough fun, we cut to Isildur, who's on the boat. You remember he didn't want to go on the boat. And it's like, okay, well, he's on the boat. I guess this is his life now. He didn't want to go there with his dad. So his dad insisted he goes, and Isildur intentionally screws it up. Like he intentionally screws something up, and the guy in the boat just instantly bans him and his friends. it's, and then we get this stupid scene of him and his friends arguing. "I didn't mean for us all to get kicked out. I just wanted me to get kicked out." Ah, Isildur, one of the great characters, reduced to a child. Remember, this is supposed to be, according to the showrunners, this is Michael Corleone. No, not even close. This is bad. Like, does anyone take Isildur seriously? Does anyone for a second believe that this is going to be the man who cuts the ring from Sauron's hand? And you might think, well, that's what a great character arc is. You go from, it's like Walter White. You go from the unassuming chemistry teacher to Heisenberg. No, it's not that there isn't a path. It's that this guy is such a lightweight. Like the reason Walter White works is that even though that transformation is incredible, like the arc of it is incredible, the seeds of Heisenberg are in him from the beginning. That is not the case with Isildur. He's just an idiot. So, wow, that's like just the first 15 minutes of the episode, and it's phenomenal. Um, okay, we'll come back to Numenor in a bit because, of course, there's more there with Galadriel and the breakout and all of that. Um, let's talk a little bit though about what's happening in Khazad-dûm because this is so stupid. First of all, this tower that's supposed to be done by spring, well, I guess it's on schedule because it's like halfway done since the last episode. Does anybody have any concept in this show of how long things take to build? Like, ever? I mean, think of like, there's massive road construction taking place on a freeway 5 miles from my house right now. It's going to be a 3-year project, and these guys are doing this massive tower with medieval technology in like 10 minutes. Does not make any sense. And Elrond, man, they're just butchering his character. He's just sitting there like, oh well, I care about my friend and blah 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 blah. Okay, so we get this scene after Elrond and Gil-galad start talking about how great it is that elves and dwarves are working together. It's like cats and dogs living together in harmony. It's not good. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to keep going, and it's never going to stop being funny. But the scene that really got me here, there's a couple of them. So there's Elrond and Disa. I think that's her name, Durin's wife, and she's trying to cover for him, and she has this line where she says, uh, Elrond's like calling her bluff on that Durin's not actually gone, and she says, "Oh, you're accusing a dwarf of lying in her own home. That's a recipe for strong gravy." What? That's not a saying ever. What does it even mean? What's a recipe for strong gravy? Like, is that a bad thing? I mean, if you like gravy, it's probably a good thing. That's a recipe for strong gravy. Like, what does that mean? It's just they're just saying words. They don't make any sense. The show's not trying to make any sense. Uh, and they're just throwing it out there. Recipe for strong gravy. If it had been for the they took our jobs moment, that would have been the title of this episode. A recipe for strong gravy. It's just fantastic. Like, what are you talking about? What does that mean? And then we get our unneeded, unnecessary origin story of the week, by which I mean this show is hell bent on finding things in Tolkien's universe that don't need to be explained and then giving them an origin story. It's the metachlorian effect, right? And this week's victim is Mithril. Okay, so Mithril, big deal. That's what was in that box, right? That Durin the third was showing to Durin the fourth, and it's like, okay, so they found Mithril. Why are we turning Mithril into this big, doesn't need to be a thing origin story? I don't know. Why does Mithril need an origin story? It doesn't. But we gotta tie everything back to the original trilogy somehow. If it's a reference there, it's gotta be referenced here. Uh, and later on, so it cuts away to other stuff, and then later on we get the scene of Disa singing to the Mithril, or maybe it's like they have this thing of miners being trapped or whatever, and then they all get out alive. But Disa's singing, and then the little Mithril shards start to vibrate. It's like, what is happening? What are you doing? Is anybody in control of the script or the direction, or are we just throwing shit at the screen and hoping that it kind of works? Like, there's no thought being given to coherence in this show. Just we need to have a powerful moment. Well, what if Deeza sings so hard that the rocks vibrate? That'll work. that'll that'll get those morons to keep tuning in to our $1 billion show. Okay, so that's the whole Elrond story for this week. Um, in the Southlands, we get Adar, who is the father. This corrupted elf that the dwarfs are calling father. Whatever. What I did find hilarious is that last week's episode ended with this out of focus shot of the of orcs chanting Adar, Adar, blah, blah, blah. We get the exact same shot, but it's in focus. Like, they literally took the same footage and just put it in focus, and that's the shot of introducing them this week. It's so lazy. It's just who are you trying to fool? And so then I actually got his name this week because I need to stop calling him the Black Elf because that sounds racist. I'm not trying to, harp on that. So Arandur, I guess is his name, and he's talking to Adar, and Adar's like, "Where were you born?" And Arundel says Beleriand, and then Adar is like, "Oh, at the mouth of the river? What?" That's like saying, "Oh, where were you born?" Uh, India. Oh, at the mouth of the river. Oh, oh, India's a big ass place. Beleriand's like, a whole continent. Uh, why? How does he just jump to that? It doesn't make any sense. And again, I don't want to harp on Tolkien lore, but there's some basic stuff that's just unforced errors in the show, and they're just saying words that they're hoping Tolkien fans will recognize. To be like, yeah, we read those books. We flipped through a couple maps. No, you didn't. You clearly didn't. You clearly have no clue what you're talking about. And then we get this whole sequence with Theo where he's at the bottom of the well, and then Aradur shows up at the last minute. It's like, why does he get out? Well, it turns out that he had a message from Adar, and it's too stupid to even explain. But that whole sequence is just not working at all. Okay, so then the last thing here for this episode to hit on that's unbelievably stupid is Galadriel breaks out of prison, which is eye-rollingly stupid. It's just we've all seen this scene so many times. Like, oh, she's gonna take on 15 guards by herself. Okay, I guess if she can swim an entire ocean, this isn't beyond the pale. But boy, does it feel lazy and unearned and cliched and all of that. But never mind that because we get the Palantir. If you've seen Lord of the Rings, the Palantir, the Seed Stones, those are bad news, right? Well, no, not at this point. Why are the Palantir bad news in Lord of the Rings? Well, they're bad news in Lord of the Rings because Sauron has one. And so you look into the Palantir and Sauron's there and he corrupts you. Happens to Saruman. It's what almost happens to Pippin. It's the great moment where Aragorn looks into the Palantir and he's able to challenge Sauron. Okay, so the underlying thing here, two things to take away. Number one, the Palantir are not inherently bad. They're just a means of communication. Number two, they're a means of communication. That's it. They do not give visions of the future. Except in Rings of Power, they apparently do. And if you caught the dialogue here, it's almost exactly the same as what Galadriel says about the mirror of Galadriel in Lord of the Rings. Like, well, it shows some things that have not come to pass. No. No, 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 no. That's not what the Palantir do. Like, okay, I'm sorry to harp on Tolkien lore, but I don't think this is even lore. This was like basic items in the world, and you're just fundamentally not understanding what their purpose is. So here's a prediction. Here's a prediction. At some point, it's going to be revealed that the Mirror of Galadriel, that water, is a liquefied version of a Palantir. A Palantir is going to be involved in creating the Mirror of Galadriel at some point in the show. That's how stupid it is. It's that lazy. It's that lack of understanding about Tolkien. Uh, so bad. So bad. Okay, so episode ends with Galadriel's on her way back to Middle Earth. Um, I guess it's too much to hope for that the boat sinks on the way and we don't have to deal with her anymore in this series. Obviously, that's not going to happen, but nevertheless, it's what I'm cheering for. We didn't see any Harfeet this episode, so in my head canon, which again, I hate that phrase, but the show's so stupid, we might as well roll with it. Um, my headcanon, the Harfoots off screen are busy executing each other to appease the gods in their death cult this week. So just assume that's what's happening off screen with them. Since we didn't get to see them, we might as well just fill in some details on our own. Wow. Wow. So I'll say we probably didn't get anything quite as dumb as Galadriel and the horse this week, but we got enough stupid stuff to compensate for it. Uh, Wildly stupid. Okay, So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do in this next week. Um, Coming up sometime in the next week, I was hoping to get to it this week, but just didn't happen. Uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna tell you and tell Amazon, not that anyone from Amazon even has a remote chance of watching this video, but I'm gonna give some free advice. I'm gonna tell you how to fix Rings of Power. Because believe it or not, I don't think the show's beyond saving. Okay, it's bad. I don't think it's going to be saved. I'm not holding my breath, but there's a path to fix this thing to actually have a good show. I'm going to tell you what it is. I've got it laid out. So we'll do that sometime in the next week. In the meantime, enjoy the stupidity, enjoy the botched abortion that is Rings of Power. It doesn't fail to delight. We're halfway through this season. I can't imagine what's going to happen. Oh, thank you. Glad you love the content. Just looking at the live comment there. Really appreciate you watching. It's we got to get through this thing together somehow. All right, guys. Appreciate you watching the show. Look for that how to fix Rings of Power video. I'm Ben DiVono, sci-fi Christian, and we'll talk to you next week for whatever horrors are in store for us. God help us all.